Year after year, we hear hockey fans declare who they think is the most underrated player in the NHL. For a long time, Alex Barkov dominated this conversation. But after going to back to back Stanley Cup finals and winning the Cup last year, he has graduated from being considered underrated. Now, most people understand that he is a top centerman in the NHL. So it's about time we find a new most underrated player in the league. Recently, names like Jesper Bratt and Jacob Slavin have been discussed, but even these two have gotten their flowers from fan bases across the NHL, in large part because they were so effective at the Four Nations face-off. So it got me thinking about who the new most underrated player in the NHL may be. And the answer surprised me a little bit. Not because he isn't a well-known name, but because he, for whatever reason, has been discounted as a second-line center or at the very best a low-end first-line center, when in reality, this player is one of the best two-way centers in the NHL. But if you listen to other fan bases describe him, you would think he is a 60 to 70 point second-line center who is decent in the defensive zone as well. So in this case, there's a little bit of balance between disrespected and underrated. And although there could very well be someone else who deserves this title or crown, I believe it is about time we show some respect to Nick Suzuki of the Montreal Canadiens. Now, if you're watching this and you're not a Montreal fan, you're probably rolling your eyes because the Habs do get a fair amount of coverage. This season, we heard all about Lane Hutson, and for good reason. He was absolutely unbelievable as a rookie, and he too faced some criticism from fans around the league as being overrated. All offense with no defensive game, which, as he proved throughout the entire season, was a false narrative. Hutson got all sorts of praise, and he's going to win the Rookie of the Year award this season. So while he is disrespected, I wouldn't go as far as to say he is an underrated player. But his teammate Nick Suzuki is weirdly not considered in this conversation. And just from watching Habs games, I would say he is their leader and MVP. He definitely doesn't have the ceiling of Lane Hutson or Ivan Demidov, but people need to realize he is a legitimate 90-point threat who plays extremely well at both ends of the ice. It's strange because with production like that and playing in a market like Montreal, you would expect that you would hear non-stop about him. He's a player that's already been a top 6 center on a Stanley Cup final team, and he's now the number 1 center on a Montreal Canadiens team that's up and coming and by every account shattered their expectations for this season. Not to mention, he is one of the most clutch players in the NHL, and that's not an exaggeration. And he's doing it while playing under probably the brightest lights of any team across the league. This is not hyperbole when I say this. There is not a single hole in Nick Suzuki's game. This season with Montreal, Nick Suzuki had 89 points in 82 games, which led the Canadiens. From the Four Nations break onward, he was top 5 in the NHL in scoring and was the biggest reason why Montreal was able to get into the playoffs last minute against all odds. Suzuki had 37 points in his last 26 games played, which was the stretch after the Four Nations break. Just a couple of seasons ago, The Athletic ranked Suzuki's contract, which was 8 years at $7.875 million per year, as one of the very worst across the entire NHL. Looking at that claim now is hilarious. In fact, it would be much more realistic to say that Nick Suzuki has a top 10 contract in the league. The take was pretty ridiculous at the time, but somewhat defending The Athletic, I'm not sure many people expected Suzuki to be this good. And that's not a slight on where he was when he signed the deal. He was already a great up-and-coming player, but now he is just absolutely dynamic and should be considered one of the very best centers in the NHL. There are so many areas of Nick Suzuki's game that make him great, but the one aspect that I admire the most about him is just how smart of a player he is. Suzuki reminds me a little bit of Brad Marchand. He's not the tallest guy at 5'11", but he's very solid on his skates, and it's the way he plays with the puck. He's incredibly patient, and he's excellent at waiting out defense to find the perfect passing lane to his teammate. I think this is a large reason why he has been able to find so much success with Cole Caulfield. Suzuki sets up the play, he manipulates defense, and to Caulfield's credit, he is extremely good at finding the open areas of the ice, where opposing defensive players might not expect Suzuki to even realize he is there. And then Suzuki is able to use his eyes and body language to make it look like a shot is coming before sliding a pass across, leaving Caulfield a great opportunity to beat a goaltender before they can even react to it. I love the clip because it shows a couple aspects of Nick Suzuki's game. For one, it is such a smart play, especially when the pressure is at its highest. The game was winding down, and he had a chance to put the puck on net in what would for sure have been the Canadiens' last opportunity. But he had the wherewithal to realize that there was enough time to get the puck over to Cole Caulfield, while also being able to manipulate defenders into thinking a shot was coming in. It's a beautiful play, and it's one where you just watch it and think to yourself that Nick Suzuki is thinking the game of hockey 2 steps ahead of everybody else. It's the kind of hockey sense that you don't see being taught to players at skills camps when they're growing up. It's the type of playmaking that just shows someone is obsessed with learning the finer details of the game. But I don't want this discussion on his brain to take away from the fact that he is also an incredibly skilled player. Suzuki has a great set of hands on him, and it's largely the reason why he is able to complete these passes so effectively while making them look so easy. On top of being able to send a saucer pass across the ice tape to tape, he's able to weave through traffic and make opposing goaltenders look absolutely stupid in a way that just leaves fans shaking their heads wondering how he pulled it off. And when it comes to the shootout, which we don't see as much in the NHL anymore, he is probably the player I enjoy watching the most. It's just so much fun to watch how he reads goaltenders and comes up with ideas beforehand that the average player would never even consider doing. One of the staple moves of his game in the shootout is the slow forehand glide before just flipping an off-speed shot into the top corner. It looks ridiculous and it makes you think, wow, that took guts to pull it off. Because if he misses, it looks horrible. But the thing is, he doesn't miss it too often. He's so good at picking a spot and forcing goaltenders to make the first move. The same applies to him going one-on-one with opposing players. He is able to use the triangle of their stick to pass the puck to himself with ease. You'll see him use a wide stance to get great leverage before sliding the puck from one side to the other. And then he uses his frame to shield it from the opposing defenders. If someone else comes in support of whoever he just danced around, he's got the hockey sense and awareness to know that he needs to move the puck fast. And he can do it to whoever is now left open off the Montreal attack. But sometimes you just need to do it yourself, and Suzuki is more than capable of that as well. He's shown that he can beat goaltenders with his shot, and although I would consider him a pass-first center for sure, he's not the type of player that has goaltenders cheating to a pass because they know he is capable and will take the shot if it is the best option for him. Suzuki not making Team Canada's Four Nations face-off team was a head-scratcher for sure. It's nothing against the players that Canada took, but his game seems perfectly fit for a bottom-six role on Canada's team. Obviously, he can play up and down the lineup like anybody else on that team, but he is also incredibly sound defensively, which screams that he would be the perfect fit for a fourth or third line center on Canada. That was the whole reason players like Anthony Cirelli were brought to the team. They're extremely good in their own end. But in fairness, they don't have nearly the offensive upside of Suzuki. And you can make the argument that their defensive game is stronger, but it's not nearly wide of a gap compared to their offensive gap. And you also can't pull the card that they've played in Stanley Cup finals, because Suzuki has done the same. You could say look at the age, but again, Nick Suzuki and Anthony Cirelli don't really have a gap between them there either. The only area you can look at and say it makes sense why they brought them along was because they were being coached by their NHL coach. You may not like that answer, but it's probably the most realistic reason out there. But with that said, I don't think there's a chance Canada passes up on Suzuki for the upcoming Olympic Games. If they do, it would be a foolish mistake. And now that I think of it, Canada has been known to make some foolish decisions before around their international teams. Exhibit A would be the most recent World Junior squad. But you would just have to think that Suzuki has done enough to earn his spot on this team. He's shown that the big games are where he really performs at his best. And in a tournament like the Olympics, you need guys who elevate their game on the biggest stages. In terms of elite players that don't simply just dominate every single shift like Connor McDavid and Nathan MacKinnon, Nick Suzuki may be the most clutch player the NHL has, relative to expectations, of course. In Montreal, excitement about Lane Hutson and Ivan Demidov understandably takes center stage in the minds of fans. But it's such a bonus that they also have an elite franchise cornerstone down the middle of the ice, and someone who is more than capable of being an extremely good leader for all the young players that are coming into the lineup. And for fans around the league, it's time to start recognizing that Nick Suzuki is more than just a low-end first-line center or a good second-line guy. He's one of the very best at his position, and as the Canadians get better and better every year, he's only going to look like an even better player. If you enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate it if you left it a like and subscribe to the channel. Also be sure to leave a comment down below, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.